everybody, I'm Aaron Simmons, professor of philosophy here at Furman, and tonight we are going to have another Pathways Philosophy Alumni Conversation. We are joined tonight by Emma Gibson, who graduated in 2017, holds one of the longest standing Man, I'm going to I'm going to start over again. It's not a long-standing record. It's the record of the most classes. Yeah, but like 18 classes. How many you had?
Shit, wait, I won. I have 17.
I don't know. 17. Yeah, you're up there at the top. All right, I'm gonna start over.
Hell
This
yeah.
I'll edit out. This will take me 2 seconds because I can just jump to where I'm at.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. I'm Aaron Simmons. This is a Philosophy Pathways Alumni Conversation. And I am excited to introduce you to a former student of mine and now a current friend of mine, Emma Gibson, who was a 2017 graduate of Furman and has at least one of the records for the most philosophy classes while at Furman. She took 17 philosophy courses. So basically, I guess she double majored in philosophy. So Emma, it's great to have you with us. And thanks so much for talking to me.
Yes, thank you for the introduction.
Well, so let's just dive right in. Tell us about, what you've been doing since graduation. Graduated 2017. How have things progressed since then? What are you doing now?
So I'm on a wild ride. I went to the University of Alabama to get a master's in religion and culture, which was a lot of critical theory and philosophy mixed together. Did that for 2 years and then decided that I was sick of writing and sick of reading by that point because I just finished my master's thesis and I started looking into other ways to engage philosophy and came to architecture, which was really random. But then now I'm at Clemson. I'm about to graduate a master's program in architecture and I have 2 weeks left. And then I will finally be done with grad school.
Woo, that is fantastic. So I know your dad was an architect, so it was random, but you at least had some sort of background pulling you that direction, yeah?
Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't have looked into it as hard if my dad wasn't an architect, but it was random in the sense of I had completely crossed it off as like an option for future career paths until I finished my master's degree in Alabama.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about how you made the decision coming out of Furman to even go to grad school at all, and then why Alabama specifically. So I know a lot of our students, as I'm sure you remember, are stressed out. What's the next step? What am I doing with my life? The conversations you and I had many of. So how is it that you finally landed on the direction of the next step after Furman? How did that come about for you?
I think it just wasn't even an option to me to do anything else. I just was really deep into philosophy and I was really engaged in the department and I was having so much fun and I did not want it to stop. And I think the only real way that I saw to keep that going was to do grad school. And it was really hard and it was really tough transitioning out of Furman, but looking back on it, I really loved it because grad school is just a completely different thing. And I chose Alabama because I got a ton of funding and the program was really small. And that was what I loved about Furman the most is just being able to know all of my classmates and all of my professors really well. So because the class was so small, I got to have a lot of control over what I was learning, which was really nice. And I had really awesome thesis advisors and professors there. And yeah, it was a really cool building, but I applied to 14 grad schools because I was so paranoid that I wouldn't get in. And it was a really hard, stressful few months, but what I've learned is you're way more qualified than you think you are, and you will get in somewhere if you apply to 14. So,
yeah, as you know, one of my most common pieces of advice is apply to more places. And it turns out in your case, if I remember, you got in, 4 or 5 different places. You had actually a really
I got into 12.
Got into 12. Oh, my God, that's right. I forgot.
I was
wow.
No, because I applied to like, I think I applied to like two schools. I can't remember, but I really was like, I can't handle rejection at this point in my life. So I was just like really going broad with like where I was applying.
No,
But I was
I
like, I will go
remember
somewhere.
just you being so successful on the applications. And yeah, to any students watching, you got to understand, like Emma and I had lots of conversations with you saying things like, am I even good enough? Is this something that I can do? I'm not sure. And repeatedly telling you, look, you've taken a ton of philosophy courses. You enjoy this. You've done well in your classes. Start having confidence that if this is something you want, then live into it. Right. And
Yeah.
so, as I'm sure you would say, and I would say, grad school is not for everybody. Not,
Yeah.
it's not just for like the elite smart kids. It's like, no, it's not for everybody, because a lot of people choose very wisely not to go down this path and
Yeah.
might be smart enough to choose otherwise. Right. But if you want this, if this is something that matters to you, and this is the direction that you see yourself finding your bliss, then do what it takes to get in, which is apply widely, be invested in the process. And it certainly worked out for you. So what
Yeah.
has the difference between architecture and religious studies, philosophy, how has that shift been for you in grad school? Did you feel like that your philosophy background prepared you, for something as you might say practical as architecture, or is it something that you really had to do a lot of transition to make work?
I was actually thinking about this today, because I was trying to like make ties about like why I liked architecture so much. And I feel like it's kind of like philosophy in the way that like it has almost everything, like I feel like philosophy is not like some kind of isolated discipline. Like I feel like it kind of creeps in everywhere. Like even, like when you get into stuff like logic
Yeah.
and like, things like that, like it kind of, you can use it everywhere. And in the early phases, like of the design process, when you're designing a building, it's very schematic, and like that's where you start to sort your ideas out.
Hmm.
So it's like a lot of philosophy. I would say most of the time it's like you have to like argue for what you're doing. And just like the decisions that you make, like it permeates like almost everything you do. Like, like there's like aesthetics, obviously. And then there's like ethics, and the critical theory really helped with like the social and political aspects of architecture, because you don't really think about that either, but like
Yeah.
it really is a social thing. And then learning about code and like, how if something's ADA accessible, kind of thinking about how do you design for, a building to be accessible, and what does it mean to exist in a space that you don't have access to, or that like it's just there's so much of that kind of thinking that you don't realize like before you start doing something like architecture. And it's so heavily involved through every single like bit of the design process. So and my teachers like I feel like it gave me a really big leg up, because you can learn how to draw, and you
Yeah.
can learn like all of the technical stuff. You can learn structures and how wood works, but you can't really like we don't have time to teach people how to think or how to do philosophy in architecture school, because you're not there for very long.
Yeah.
And so like having like 6 years of like philosophy and like critical theory and stuff, it has been so valuable to like making my stuff stand out, or just like making it like everything is so intentional. Like every part of the building is like, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Really.
it's super cool because, of course, in the philosophy department, we claim that, philosophy, it's not some theoretical discipline that then you apply. It's already applied insofar as it's how do we live well, and how do we live on purpose, and how do we live with others. And then we've got, different questions that emerge in those spaces where Dr. Epwright will think about, how do we then function as people concerned with medical realities and, embodiment as is, geared towards health. Dr. Gandolfo concerned with, how do we then make sense of poverty and economic status, or Dr. Anderson talking about, gendered identity, et cetera, or Dr. Worth with food. I mean, the idea of thinking through the kind of questions that philosophy raises, it's not like, oh, well, we learn epistemology in a vacuum and then have to go figure out how to put it into practice. philosophy has always been practical, right? It's always been, well, how do we live, and how do we live on purpose, and what does it look like to do it well? And so it's cool to hear, the way that this has played out for you. So what would you tell current students who maybe are wrestling with the what they perceive as the monumental weight of decisions about the future, about their career, about their path? How is it that you would maybe calm them down a little bit, or give them a deep breath? How would you respond to them, basically where you were as a senior, trying to figure out what to do with your life coming out of college?
Okay, that's actually so easy for me to answer because at the time I felt like I had to be doing something. And looking back on it now, if I had to do it again, I would take a gap year. Because you have so much time, like more time than you realize. And being 27, like about to have my 5-year college reunion or whatever, like it feels like I just graduated yesterday. So it's just like, figure out what you want to do, take a breath, because Furman's really hard and really like exhausting. I can't talk because I haven't stopped, so I guess it's not like the same, but like figure out what you want to do. And if you need to take a year, it doesn't matter. And if you are like really going hard, keep going. Like it just, taking that time to figure out what you want to do is not a waste of time.
Yeah.
And I think and I knew that at the time too. I was just surrounded by people who were all going to grad school, and I'm like, we're all going to do this.
Well, and it may be the case that we sometimes figure out the next step by taking steps that we haven't quite figured out, right? I mean, it occurs to me that the data suggests that roughly 10% of American adults are working in a field directly related to their college major, and that on average adults will change careers 3 times in their lives. And so you figure, well, shoot, maybe this then supports the idea, oh, well, why go to college? It's not really that relevant. But I think it's the opposite, is what you're saying. It's, college is the space, and philosophy in particular is the discipline, the discourse that invites us to be good at living on purpose. And part of that means, as Kierkegaard says, taking steps forward, but understanding backwards. Now it's easy for you to look back and say, oh yes, when I was a senior, I was on this path.
Yeah.
But when you were a senior, you were, bonkers, just trying to figure out how to kind of hang in there and finish, and still missing all your friends, and oh my goodness, and how will I be able to survive without this person and that person? But you did fine. And then now looking back, you're like, man, like it's kind of chill now, right? 27 is way less stressful in one sense than 21 is because you kind of got a few years under you and you're like, no, I'm good. And maybe there's something about that you're going to be okay kind of message that I think we need to convey more to current students.
Yeah. I don't regret grad school. Like, I mean, I know I say I wish I had a gap year, but if it meant like changing where I'm at now, I wouldn't, say that. But I think a lot of it is just like prioritizing a routine, or just like prioritizing yourself. And I think it's easy, and I still don't do this either, so I can't talk, but like trying to remember, like, okay, will I care about this in 10 years? If the answer is no, like you have to chill. But yeah, and I mean, just because I didn't end up going into I wanted to be a professor, just because I didn't do that doesn't mean that like I've wasted any time.
Right.
Like, and people ask me that all the time, like, oh, well, this has nothing to do with philosophy. I'm like, no, it has like everything to do with philosophy. Like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for philosophy. Like, and I don't know, whatever you do, philosophy will be relevant.
Yeah,
that's what
I love that message. So what is your favorite memory or two from your time at Furman? Things that when you think back to Furman, you're like, oh yeah, that sort of crystallizes it for you. Other than Anderson and I riding the tandem bike.
I was about to say tandem bike.
That clearly is one of my favorite memories of you and Maya Welburn, who was actually on one of our previous panels.
I was about to say, like, in relationship to the philosophy department is my best friend Maya, and Yeah, I think about it all the time. I keep our little Phi House sticker on my water bottle.
Oh yes.
And yeah, the okay,
And
Halloween.
you and Maya, we should say, Maya, who again is for current students, go watch our panel we did a few weeks ago. Maya's on that one, currently finishing her PhD at University of Oregon. And Maya and Emma were co-presidents of the Philosophy Club, which basically created, if I remember right, y'all started the phrase Philosophy Club. It's just one big party. And so,
Oh God,
you know,
I
that
forgot
that
about that.
yeah, that phrase kind of stuck. And boy, y'all did philosophy with a lot of fun. I admit it was pretty
Yeah,
baller while you were here.
it was mostly just trying to have as much fun as possible. I would
Not
definitely
a
say
bad move.
the peak is when Maya dressed up as Simone de Beauvoir and I dressed up as Jean-Paul Sartre. That's definitely a peak
That was awesome.
tandem,
There are
obviously.
pictures of the two of you floating around, I know.
Yeah, those are really good. And
Mm-hmm.
then Kava. I really liked the when we forced Dr. Stone to go get Kava with
That's
us.
right. Eli Simmons, if I remember right, was hopped up on, we've got to go get kava, and y'all acquiesced or something. So
Yeah, we were like, okay, I've never done that before, but that's really funny if we convince a Furman club to go do that.
and I remember, yeah, Dr. Stone rocking it. Yeah, that's hilarious. So what is it that if you could go back and tell yourself in college, especially as a freshman? So you as a freshman were not the put together, confident philosopher that sits in front of me. You know, you were the average freshman who was trying to figure out how to put one foot in front of the other and not lose oneself in the midst of the pressure cooker that is college. If you could go back and talk to that 18-year-old, what would you tell her?
Mm, I'm really glad I did this at the time, which was just like take all of the classes that interest you. And I think I would tell every freshman that.
Mm-hmm.
And to, I think, mostly just not take things so seriously. And I learned that later in college. But when I was a freshman, it was like everything was life or death. Like it was, the stakes were so high. And then, towards the end of college, it was like, oh, Simmons, I'm not taking this test. Like, see you later. I'm leaving. Bye. And I just like wish that maybe not like starting with that energy, but like definitely realizing that like you have to enjoy yourself in college. Like it doesn't have to be so intense.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you've heard me say before, I'm sure, is we tend to act like college is this thing that's not the real world. And then you graduate and you're thrown into the real world. And what I always say is that's patronizing to the anxiety and struggles and joys and pains and despair and, jubilation that occur while in college. That's the
Mm-hmm.
same stuff that happens in life. It's just with different people and different social priorities and different, ways we spend our days. But it's not like college is not the real world. It's what invites us to figure out, how to do this and how to be an adult and how to navigate things. And you're right, if you aren't going to have fun at it, you're doing it wrong. And if you're taking it so seriously that it's just like overwhelming you, this is not sustainable. And so I think you and Maya, there was a whole group of you that I think you guys rubbed off on very well. Lane Irwin and others who y'all just did it well. It was relaxed. Yeah, Peter Dimery was rocking, and it was a neat time because and this of course ebbs and flows throughout the years. But you all created, I think, two things that were really crucial. One, you created a community in the philosophy department such that you wanted to be around each other. And that then made slogging through Heidegger and 20th or whatever, like it made that fun because you were hanging out with the people you wanted to be with anyway, doing this thing that you all realized was kind of hilarious that people take seriously. And that allowed you to kind of help each other through this. And it's cool to see all of you then going in different directions. Peter's now a professional musician, Maya finishing PhD in philosophy. You're doing architecture. I mean, radically different things. Lane Irwin is now, he's now a stunt man in Hollywood, right? So all these different directions. And yet you all helped each other make this time in college what it really could be. And that's something I think also that's cool to explain to the current students is, look, make it what you wish it were. Don't wait for someone to hand to you the thing that you wish you had.
Yeah. Be annoying as possible. That's also another thing I learned in college is like if you just completely put yourself out there and you're like 100% authentic and like stand by it, like double down on everything you do, people will match your energy.
Yeah.
And like that was what Maya and I learned. It helps if you have a friend, if you really want to be ridiculous, but like especially like with departments and stuff, like I feel like I rarely saw other departments that were like as close as the philosophy department was. Mm-hmm. But yeah. If you're just really confident.
It's a testament to you guys deciding this is what we want to be, and so you became that. And I think that's something really encouraging to our current students. It's easy, I think, at a place like Furman where there's, it's a pressure cooker and there's lots of reasons to feel like you're not good enough. And yet when you realize, wow, but I've got 4 years to make the most of this. How can I do that well? And part of that lesson, I think, is you are more likely to move successfully into the next stages of life if you're not overwhelmed by every single decision at Furman having to be geared toward those next stages, right?
Yeah.
And jobs matter, but they matter because people do. And so it's important that we enjoy being with each other and walking as long as we can together. And, we'll figure the job stuff out. And we've got great resources at Furman to help do that, career services and vocation centers and, all the strength finders tests and all the great things we do. Those are awesome, but they're awesome because people are already units of dignity. And, it's cool if you get to hang out with people you like being around. So, well, I like being around you, Emma, and we should, you and I just had coffee a few weeks ago at Starbucks, and it's neat to see the relationships that Furman facilitates and cultivates. And it's been really an honor to see the way that you've moved into your life and, you were thriving at it. And it's inspiration, I hope, to all the students who will get to hear this and learn about where you've been.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. So give me, as a way of closing then, tell me, one of the things that philosophers of course do is they let questions and question marks be everywhere, as Nietzsche says. So what are the questions that right now continue to kind of keep you up at night?
Oh, just like philosophy related?
Yeah. Like when you were in college, we have tons of questions, right? Because we're handing them to you every day in class. But I think what's cool is as we get out of that, we realize there are some other questions that are really significant to us that kind of keep coming back and recurring. What are some of those questions for you now?
Well, I'm like really deep into this building that I'm working on. And I feel like the thing that I'm constantly thinking about is like, what am I not thinking about? Like, what am I missing? Because you don't want to forget something and then have it. I just feel like, if you don't take everything into account, my building's not going to be as good. So I feel like I'm just constantly thinking about, okay, will my building hurt the planet, or will it hurt, so-and-so, like, will it be an eyesore? And it's just like, there are so many things to worry about. So I don't know, I guess just, and also critical theory ruined me for that. Like, I feel like I can't do anything. No one can say a word to me anymore without me being like, do you understand the implications of what you're saying? Like, I know it's, so yeah. I think just trying to balance all that.
It's the David Foster Wallace point, right? I mean, when we start realizing that paying attention is the sole task of human existence, and that this is water is a reminder that the stuff we tend to ignore is often the most important stuff. Yeah. We make a habit of paying attention to stuff that everybody else, misses. And I think it's super cool that you as an architect are doing that in ways that then allow the rest of us to inhabit our world with bodies that find joy without even being able to explain why, because the building that we are in, or the planet that we inhabit, that has been made more sustainable by the buildings we're in. So thanks for the good you are doing, and hopefully we'll get you back on campus and meet with the students, and maybe even meet at the Kava bar. I don't know, we'll have to have a philosophy club reunion with you.
I know, I still have to chill. I'm still like deep in throngs of grad school. So yeah, I'm
Two,
down.
two more weeks, two more weeks.
I know, so close.
Oh man. Well, hey, thank you, Emma, so much for joining us. And to everybody, again, the philosophy department and the Pathways program are committed to finding ways to connect you with our alums, to invite you into the relationships that really do matter and create the networks that allow for thriving in different stages of our lives. So if there's anything that philosophy department can do, please reach out to us. And again, lots of these videos will be coming. And so check them out, listen to our alums. They are happy to be made available to you. So if you've enjoyed hearing from Emma, please reach out and I will pass you her email address and she would love to hear from you. So Emma, thank you. And to everybody else, thank you all. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.